Divorce happens. In fact, it happens to almost 50% of first marriages. So let's talk about it. Welcome to Divorce Happens, a podcast to educate, inspire, support, and yes, make you laugh through divorce and beyond so that you can start fresh on the next phase of your journey. Remember, divorce happens, and then we start fresh.
You'll get divorced. You'll get divorced.
Getting divorced?
I'm getting a divorce.
You're getting a divorce.
Because she's getting a divorce.
So what if I get divorced?
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Divorce Happens, the podcast where we support you before, during, and after divorce with education, inspiration, and a little bit of laughter. Because as you know, divorce happens, and then you start fresh. And we're here with one of our amazing Fresh Starts experts, Tamar. Tamar, can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yes, I absolutely can. So I am Tamar Barbash. I am a DCA certified ADR divorce coach, which stands for Alternative Dispute Resolution. So the work that I do with clients focuses around getting through the divorce process with flexible, goal-oriented support that helps people to figure out what decisions they want to make in line with their own values, goals, interests. I think about it like, if you're honest about what's going on when you're getting divorced, there's so much emotional weight that comes with it. And often with that weight comes not the best decision making because we are angry or we are resentful or we just want to be done with it. And it can be hard to stay focused on what we actually want to accomplish, what will actually be in the best interest of everybody involved. And so having a divorce coach helps you stay focused on those goals and making sure that all the decisions that are made along the way are in line with what that ultimate vision is of where you're going to end up.
Yeah, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, what else in our life, really encompasses every single piece of ourselves and the legal process, right, at the same time. Maybe like buying a house, selling a house is emotional. I've been there, but there's really nothing like divorce, and it is so overwhelming. Now, question for you: you've ushered a lot of people through the divorce journey. Does divorce always need to be this like high conflict situation, or could we try to not have it like that?
So, of course, it's going to depend on who the players are. But in theory, no, it does not need to be this high conflict sort of experience. And if you have two people who are willing to show up at the table and approach it from a perspective of, we need to get through this. We both want to walk away from the table feeling okay about where things end up. Then we can get through this in a way that is less combative, right? There's always going to be conflict because it's a conflicting kind of experience, but it doesn't have to be a battle. It doesn't have to be war. And that is a conscious choice that people can make going into it. And I think to your point that you were saying earlier in terms of divorce sort of being this unique kind of experience, it's so complicated because, and especially when there's children involved, because you have a situation where you're trying to dissolve a partnership, but where you also need to remain in touch and in contact and in functional working relationship with this other person. So you can't just throw a grenade at the whole thing and blow it up because you need to co-parent. So there's a lot of complexity around it and presenting it and approaching it in a way that allows you to continue working together without so much baggage and anger and resentment is always going to be preferable.
It's so complicated, right? Like as I'm listening to you, I'm like, oh my gosh, it really is as complicated as it sounds because you're shifting your relationship with the person you built a life with. You have to then shift to co-parents. You're healing or trying to heal. You have children, everything.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say as a divorce coach, like if somebody's listening to this and they're like, well, I really don't, I hear this all the time, right? I don't want this to be a high conflict divorce. Maybe we could be doing it more amicably. What have you seen helps that maybe along the process?
Well, I think a big part of it is recognizing where we ourselves can do things differently. If you spend your time hoping and wishing that the person you're doing this with, that your soon to be ex, is going to do things differently, I just wish he would do this. I just wish she wouldn't be like that. I just wish that this was easier. Then we're going to just continue the loop of the cycle that isn't working. So the key is being able to take responsibility and ownership for the patterns and the cycles that exist and say, I'm going to do something different here. I'm going to respond differently. I'm going to approach this differently. And hopefully that will elicit a different response and that will break the cycle and the patterns that are problematic to me right now. I
Mm.
think we spend a lot of time hoping and wishing and blaming, the other person and wanting them to do something different. And that is going to set us up for failure because we can't control what anybody else is doing.
So how does a divorce coach help us through this process?
So that's part of it, right? Is helping people to recognize where their own actions and behaviors are leading to behaviors from their ex that are not helping the negotiation process, right? So like I had a client recently who said, I'm going away for the weekend. I need my ex to, they're stepping up for watching our daughter in a way that, it's going to be different than our typical schedule. And so I sent him a text with all these questions and he's not answering them. And, it's really frustrating. And so we had a whole conversation about what control looks like in their current setup, right? Who's steering the ship, who's in charge, and how does the other person feel? And what we kind of got to the bottom of is that she's kind of calling all the shots. She decided she wanted to get the divorce. She kind of, put everything in motion and he's sort of just taking her lead. And so the one place where he can kind of regain some control over this situation is that when she needs something from him, he can resist and maybe not
Mm.
answer her immediately. He can take his time and let her flounder a little bit because at least then, there's some control on his part. And so just to be able to lead with empathy and to sort of see the situation from the other person's side and say, okay, I can understand how it might be overwhelming from where he's sitting, that I'm just constantly saying, this is what's happening. This is how we're going to do this. And maybe there's a way to approach it where I say, hey, I'm going away for the weekend. Can we sit down so you can tell me what you need from me
Right.
in order to make this a successful situation? And so it's not a matter, like, she's not wrong. He needs to answer the questions. They need to take care of their daughter.
Mhm.
These are important things. But is there something in my approach that I can do differently that will elicit a different response and will actually ultimately be better for me also?
Right. Right. And the work that you do with clients is helping them figure out what are those other optional responses that you could bring to the table, right? Because we're so used to being in the same, whether you're a people pleaser, or whether you're the one that takes control or whatever it is. The work that you do is really important because sometimes people don't understand where to even begin with finding the words to say for those moments.
Correct. Correct. And also it can be so easy because relationship dynamics are so established. Usually by the time you've reached this stage, you've been married for X number of years,
Yeah.
there are so many established sort of behavioral dynamics between the two people that it just comes naturally. It's like, this is how I always approach it. This is how he always responds. And we just get into these fights and he doesn't like it that I speak to him this way. And I don't like it that he reacts like that. So if we can tweak it just a little bit, there can sometimes be an entirely different dynamic that comes from that small shift. And so
Mm.
that becomes the question. And it becomes, and especially when you're talking about negotiating and trying to come to some sort of agreement, if we can approach it in a way that is easier for them to hear it and that is more likely to get them to be willing to meet us halfway, then that is to our benefit. And I think something that that I've talked about a lot with my clients is that there are many situations where we just have to kind of hold our nose and swallow our pride with how we have to behave because this person doesn't deserve my kindness. This person doesn't deserve my generosity. And so the question is, what's the bigger picture, right? They don't deserve my kindness. They don't deserve my generosity. You're right about that. But how is being a little kinder, a little more generous going to ultimately get you what you want? And that is the bigger picture that you have to look at.
And it's so hard, right? It's so hard because when you're in the moment, you're like, this is the worst ever. I don't want to be the bigger person, right? I don't want
Correct.
to be that. So much of the work you do with people is for the person themselves, right? Like you said a couple times, we are the ones that get to decide how to elicit that change. What are some tools or tips that you have for clients for themselves to like bring their body and nervous system back to a place that they can put their ego aside for a second and show up?
Yeah. Well, you sort of answered your own question in the question, right? Because recognizing your own nervous system and your own responses is exactly the key. If your like anxiety is raging and you are like already so triggered, that is not the right place to be responding from, right? You're just not going to be able to respond in a way that is intentional and thoughtful and strategic because you are so triggered and you're so like you've been activated.
Right.
So recognizing that and saying, I'm not in the space right now where this is going to be productive. So I'm going to take a beat. And that can be you get a text. You do not have to answer it right away. The phone is ringing and you know what it's about and you're not ready to have that conversation. You don't need to answer it yet. Like there are moments where you can say, I need to put a pin in this because this is where I am at right now from a nervous system perspective, from a mindset perspective, is not going to be productive. And so I'm going to hold off until I can think this through and I can come up with how I want to approach this that's going to potentially be the best outcome for everybody.
So if someone's listening to this tomorrow and they're like, oh, I need the support in this, how do you work with people? Where do you work with people? How can people get in touch with you?
So I work completely remotely. I see all my clients over Google Meet. And my website is nbdivorcecoaching.com, NB like new beginnings. So nbdivorcecoaching.com. People can book a 20-minute discovery call, which is an opportunity to ask me questions about how the coaching process works and for me to explain how I can be helpful. People come to me at all different parts of the divorce process. So depending on where you're at, I can offer different support. I always recommend working with a coach early on in the process if you can. If it's too late and you've already started and then you're like, wait, I need support now, it's certainly not too late. But a divorce coach can be really useful in the beginning of the process, especially because of what we were talking about earlier in terms of, trying to come up with a less combative way to do this. There are ways to get divorced that lend themselves to being more combative to begin with, right? If you got the advice from your friend to go out and find the biggest shark of an attorney, that's laying the groundwork right there for battle, right? Like you're saying, I'm getting this hardcore attorney, we're going to war. So just having someone support you through the decision-making process in the early parts where you can kind of say, wait, maybe I don't want to like set the groundwork for battle here. Maybe I want to try and approach this in a more amicable, friendly, collaborative way. That could save you time and energy and money as well.
If someone's listening to this and they're kind of in that conflict space and having a hard time, what would be some words of encouragement that you could leave them with today?
I think what's most encouraging is that there's almost always something we can do to change a situation. I think it feels really helpless sometimes because we think the other person's never going to change, the other person's never going to do anything differently, the other person's always going to be difficult. And where that may be true, there's often something we can do in our own behaviors and actions and responses that can shift the way things are going. And it's not always easy and it's not always fun, but if we are willing to kind of get in the dirt and be a little bit humble throughout the process, it can often lead to good things in the end.
I love that. Such great advice. Tamar, thank you so much. You can always find Tamar at Fresh Starts Registry in the Expert Guide. She is one of our amazing experts. We love the work you do and the way that you
Thank you.
guide people through all of these moments to the other side. So if you're interested in working with Tamar, definitely take her up on that phone call and get to work today so you can get to the other side. Thanks so much,
Thanks,
Tamar.
Olivia. Thank you.
Divorce Happens is produced by Fresh Starts Registry, the only divorce registry platform for everything you need to begin again, including home items, hype team, and everything in between. Remember, divorce happens, and then we start fresh. We're here to support you before, during, and after divorce. Head to freshstartsregistry.com for more info.